Hello, and welcome to Human Ascension with Ellie. So, the past few weeks, we've been talking about this whole concept of human ascension, and it all sounds really amazing. We're transitioning from our current plane of existence into something higher, which is also lighter and far more advanced than anything that we've experienced previously, perhaps in our entire lives. Well, our entire current lives, anyway. But what exactly are we talking about when we talk about human ascension? What is human ascension and what's so good about it? And is human ascension or is ascending the same thing as when we move into a higher plane of consciousness? Are they the same or are they different in some way? And also, a really important question, I think, how do we get to higher consciousness? Do we actually have to be dead in order for that to happen first? Or can we reach a higher level of consciousness or an ascendant level of existence without having to die, without having to drop dead in order to get there? So let's first take a look at understanding what the differences are between higher consciousness and human ascension. They are actually interconnected concepts that have been discussed in some sort of confusing ways sometimes that make it hard to differentiate between them. And this happens with spiritual and also physiological kind of discussions. Sometimes they're interblended. However, they are slightly different, but they are very much complementary. Ascension is the process of raising your consciousness to a higher level. It's often associated with spiritual growth and the achievement of a higher state of being. Ascension involves letting go of limiting beliefs and patterns of behavior that no longer serve you. It's about embracing new ways of thinking and being. One of the key aspects of ascension is the understanding that everything in the universe is made up of energy. So, energy can never be stopped or cancelled or deleted ever. The only thing that can ever happen to energy is that it can change in frequency or transform itself into different kinds of energetic expression. If we're talking about our own ascension, well, that's about us raising our own energy frequency or vibrational frequency, which allows us to connect with higher states of consciousness or to tap into the infinite potential of the universe. So, ascension is a deeply personal journey that requires dedication, commitment, and an open mind. It leads to profound transformation and a greater sense of purpose and meaning of life. In a very simple way, let's just say that human ascension is what happens. So it's the destination once you've raised your level of consciousness. So today I'm going to focus on the issue of consciousness and achieving higher consciousness. Higher consciousness refers to an ever expanding awareness of existence, spiritual essence, and the energetic nature of all things. It transcends the limitation of the physical world and connects us to spiritual wisdom, divine love, infinite peace, and a higher order of being. So, another way of saying this is that when you tap into your higher consciousness, you awaken to the eternal and unlimited aspects of your own being. So, I'm not going to pronounce myself to be a big expert in higher consciousness because I'm not. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to defer to one of the bona fide experts in the field, and I'm going to share what he has to say about higher consciousness and how and when we ascend to our higher plane of existence and when we can recognize that in ourselves. What I do know is that there's 4 stages of consciousness. And the person that I'm relying on who states this is a doctor by the name of Michael Beckwith, who is the founder of an institute called the Agape International Spiritual Center in Los Angeles. Before I go into too much detail about these 4 levels of existence, I want to make sure that we understand more about Michael Beckwith and his spiritual center. So, Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith is a renowned spiritual teacher, author, and the founder and CEO of Agape International Spiritual Center. Michael Beckwith founded the center with a vision of creating a spiritual community that transcends traditional denominations. Agape Center, which is sometimes just known as Agape, is a trans-denominational community that comprises of thousands of local members and also global live streamers. And so I guess that makes the center truly international, like so many things are these days. This November is actually going to be Agape's 36th anniversary, and the centre has earned pretty high regard all over the world due to its cultural, racial, and spiritual inclusivity. You may have heard of quite a number of the people who've often praised Michael Beckwith and his Agape Centre. They include Coretta Scott King, who is the wife of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, also Oprah, and the Dalai Lama, just to name a few. Beckwith with the Agape Centre have also been called upon to address the United Nations General Assembly not that long ago. And Michael Beckwith is also known for his personal teachings on matters relating to the science of inner transformation, practical approaches to spirituality, meditation, affirmative prayer, and life visioning. Michael Beckwith also was the individual chosen to present Nelson Mandela with the Gandhi King Award just prior to Mandela's passing. I guess you could say that Michael Beckwith, or Michael, is considered to be a very inspirational person for people who are seeking spiritual enlightenment. So let's take a look at Michael's 4 stages of human consciousness. He actually calls them the 4 frequencies rather than the stages, but generally it's pretty much the same thing. I might mix my words up, but we're talking about the same thing. The important thing to remember here is that there are 4 of them, okay? So the first stage, which I guess you could say is the lowest of all of the stages, or the least evolved of all of the stages, is the victim consciousness. In victim consciousness stage, a person perceives that external factors determine their destiny, including their happiness, their success, and their well-being. A person might feel as though things are being done to them, or that they're a victim of something, or that things are happening that are outside of their control. They kind of seem as though they are always on the receiving end of their life. Victim consciousness is a state of mind when an individual considers themselves to be a victim of external circumstances, events, or other people. Some of the characteristics that you might see in a person with victim consciousness, or that you may feel that in yourself, if you are at that lower level, which is the victim consciousness level, are the following. There may be an issue of external blame shifting. People with victim consciousness tend to blame other people or other factors for their challenges, setbacks, and unhappiness. They believe that events are happening to them rather than recognizing their own role in creating or responding to those events. People who associate with victimhood may also have a sense of helplessness. They may feel powerless and helpless to be able to prevent what's happening around them. They may believe that they have little control over their own lives and that others hold all of the power. This mindset can lead to feelings of resignation. It may also produce a very passive or maybe even a passive-aggressive kind of personality. Individuals with victim consciousness may also see themselves as being unworthy and unlovable or inadequate. They may struggle with low self-esteem and self-doubt. They may also find themselves in a similar negative type of situation repeatedly in their lives, like a recurring pattern of negativity. They may attract toxic relationships, encounter financial difficulties repeatedly, or face health issues without recognizing their own patterns of thought and behavior. People with a victim consciousness also tend to lack responsibility or personal accountability. They have difficulty or they refuse to take responsibility for their choices or their actions. Taking responsibility in that way is an essential aspect of personal growth. Victim conscious people, however, resist that kind of accountability. They avoid and may even restrict making changes to improve their circumstances. They might have a real aversion to change and very strongly oppose and prevent the prospect of changing their life, even if that change could possibly make their life better or easier. Stepping out of victimhood or a victim consciousness requires real courage and a willingness to explore new perspectives. So, Michael Beckwith suggests that paying attention to the language used by someone in victim consciousness will help you to understand them. They often use phrases like, oh, why does this always happen to me? Or I can't catch a break. Their mindset reinforces their victim identity. So, Michael Beckwith also says that there are methods of breaking out of victim consciousness because, who on earth would want to stay there? It doesn't sound very pleasant at all. Firstly, you need to have an awareness of your circumstance. So, recognize when you slip into victim thinking. When you start talking yourself down and your life circumstances down, that could be a clue. Being aware of things that you say or that you do to reinforce victim consciousness is the first step towards transformation out of it and into something higher. So, for example, instead of blame shifting, a small step to something higher could involve asking yourself what you can do differently to regain control over your environment. You should also be kind to yourself and forgive the little things that might not be perfect around you or about you. Self-compassion goes a really long way. It's important to understand that everybody faces challenges, even if we can't see it in their lives. Like in today's society, hiding the challenges of life can sometimes be really easy to do. It doesn't mean that it isn't there. Just think about all those people on Facebook who seem to have perfect lives. I bet you they don't. So realize that we all have challenges in life, but we also have the power to respond differently or in the best possible way. We each have the power to rewrite our narrative. Instead of being a victim, we can become the hero in our own life journey. I really love the idea of each of us becoming our own hero. It's a wonderful self-love exercise and it can't possibly go anywhere but up from there. When you realize that you are the hero living inside your mind and your body and that you can control your future in the smallest possible way, how can you not ascend to something higher? Finally, Michael Beckwith also suggests that people who have a feeling of victimhood should seek support from other people, reaching out to friends, therapists, or coaches who can help shift our mindset, which will allow us to break free from our sense of being a victim. So I think I've talked victim consciousness pretty well. Let's take a look at the second level of consciousness. And what I mean by that is the second from the bottom. Michael Beckwith calls this second stage of consciousness the manifesto consciousness. At this level, a person recognizes their ability to shape their reality. They use spiritual principles such as affirmations and visualizations to manifest the life they desire. Manifestation is an interesting concept, and it does have components that I can describe briefly here. For example, manifestors are natural initiators. They have an innate ability to start something or change the current circumstances or set new things into motion. They also thrive when they're allowed to be themselves. Their natural curiosity drives them to explore and take action really freely without being inhibited. Manifestors are also tuned into their environment and the energy around them. They can sense shifts in the energy and they can also sense new opportunities that might be worthwhile exploring. A couple of considerations when it comes to being a manifestor, though, is that it's important to inform other people, especially people who may be affected by your actions, before you start making significant changes or taking steps that may impact them. This helps to maintain harmony and prevent resistance around you. It's much healthier when it comes from a place that's managing the relationship as well. Another thing that the manifestor consciousness might require is patience. Sometimes, when a manifestor is met with resistance, their natural urge is to initiate anyway, and they might feel frustrated by their surroundings. One of the most important things to consider if you are a manifester is the concept of striving towards peace. This is about aligning or doing your best to align with your true nature and acting in harmony with what's around you and with your circumstances. Strive for inner peace. A person who is a manifester consciousness can lead to a really fulfilling life. What's important, according to Michael Beckwith, is that they understand their needs, desires, and the patterns by which they live their life. That's the element of their self awareness. They should also initiate consciously, using their power to create positive rather than negative changes. And they should also learn reflective practices such as meditation or keeping a journal, or even undertaking group or individual therapy of some kind. The purpose of this is to reflect and be aware of the thoughts that they have so that they can understand themselves to the best of their ability. Probably the most important aspect to consider if you are a manifestor consciousness is that you should always be coming from a place of authenticity. This will allow you to embrace your unique energy and feel connected in a genuine way to everything and everyone in your environment. The third stage, and what I mean by that is the second from the top, or the second highest level of consciousness, is the channel consciousness. At this stage, a person becomes a conduit for higher wisdom and creativity. They allow divine inspiration to flow through them. Channeling is a practice for a person that establishes a connection with a non physical realm or consciousness to convey information, energies, or guidance. It involves entering a focused or altered state of consciousness, allowing the channeler to attune themselves to spiritual beings or other sources and to reveal their messages or insights. There are different types of channeling. For example, intuitive channeling is one example, which is as you'd expect someone like a clairvoyant to be. With intuitive channeling, the person or the channel is present and conscious in the moment. They receive guidance from spirit through thought forms, messages, and divine insights. Sometimes the flow of guidance happens without their conscious awareness, although they are conscious. Intuitive channeling is increasingly becoming something that we're commonly seeing, and it can sometimes occur without the channeler even recognizing it. Another kind of channeling is referred to as a light trance channeling. This is a conscious form of channeling which involves deliberate intention. The channeler deliberately goes within, calling in their guides, angels, or a high dimensional being of some kind. Some people also claim to be calling in the highest form of spirit, such as Christ or something of that nature. This kind of channeling involves a focus on the heart, the third eye, and the crown, allowing for the consciousness to become receptive. There's a conscious effort to connect via the chakra, and in some cases, the channeler will experience a message flowing through them so consistently that they're able to almost step aside to observe and allow a really clear communication to occur from spirit. This is something that would be a little more rare than the intuitive channel is. It could be that it just takes far longer to develop such skill, although I'm sure there are people who are naturally born with this ability as well. Yet another example of channeling, which we may see at this level from time to time, is trance channeling. Trance channeling takes channeling to an even deeper level. Edgar Casey, for example, was a trance channeler, and he would be a conduit for spirit in his sleep. In this instance, the channel fully leaves their body, allowing a spirit guide or higher dimensional being to essentially take over. The guide speaks directly through the channel's body. Trance channeling requires a high level of surrender and trust in the process. Another example I can think of as a trance channeler is the extraterrestrial hybrid who goes by the name of Bashar and is channeled through the human Daryl Anchor. Daryl has stated on a number of occasions that he basically takes a back seat and allows Bashar to take over, and that often he doesn't even recall what's been discussed during the trance sessions. So basically, the channeling, regardless of the method or the level in which the channeling occurs, is like a bridge between our earthly existence and the cosmic realm. Whether it's intuitive, conscious, or trance like channeling, the process allows us to tap into our higher wisdom and connect with spiritual energies beyond the physical plane. The fourth, and therefore the highest level of consciousness, according to Michael Beckwith, is unity consciousness. At its highest point, a person who is a unity consciousness will experience a complete oneness with all of existence. They will recognize themselves as being an expression of the divine who is interconnected with everything in the universe. Unity consciousness is a profound state of awareness where the boundaries between the individual self and the greater cosmic intelligence have dissolved completely. It involves the profound recognition that everything in existence is interconnected, and it transcends beyond the illusion of there being a separateness between us. At its core, unity consciousness is a state of acknowledgement that there are no true divisions between things, whether they're people of any race, location, circumstance, viewpoint, age, gender, or any other defining characteristic. But also, it's a recognition that no true division exists between all other living things and non-living things, the elements, and even the cosmic forces. Everything from our fellow humans to animals to birds, bugs, the soil beneath our feet, the stars in the sky, the air, the water, inanimate objects such as my desk, for example, everything in the universe is interconnected, and we exist in a mutually present and energy-driven single existence. Unity consciousness is like recognizing that all of existence appears like a vast sea of energy, infinite and universal by nature. But then it also includes patterns that emerge, which form the building blocks of all existence. So these patterns are energy patterns that dance around with other energy patterns, creating an illusion of particles and matter. But beneath that illusion, the truth is that all of the particles are composed of just patterns within the same universal energy field. This is a concept that's supported by quantum physicists, although the quantum physicists are still trying to put together the scientific explanation of how this can be duplicated or how the method can be fully understood and articulated. An aspect of unity consciousness is the understanding of the human experience being something that exists in or inhabits within the third dimension on Earth. And as we know, Earth orbits the Sun, which is just one of many stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So our perception of separateness arises from a deep conditioning, but it conceals a profound reality. And that reality is that we are expressions of this infinite source of consciousness. The state of unity consciousness is like an invitation for us to break free from the illusion of duality. And that illusion of duality arises from the system rules that humans live in, where we're encouraged to perceive ourselves as being separate entities from each other. We're conditioned that way, and if we were conditioned in another way, then we would have a different kind of understanding of our existence. However, it just so happens that we're living in a world of a material nature like Earth, and that makes it easier for us to be originally conditioned to believe that the third dimension is the only dimension of reality, when in fact, just like the sun is only one star, there are many, many other possibilities, just as there are many, many other stars in the galaxy. Unity consciousness is an acknowledgement of there being those many more possibilities. Unity consciousness is an experience in which we break through the condition of third dimensional humanity here on Earth and dip our toes into the interconnectedness with all of life, becoming part of the cosmic dance taking place with energy and consciousness throughout the universe, far beyond what we actually tangibly know. Michael Beckwith describes a number of methods in which we can access unity consciousness, things like mindfulness and meditation, which allow us to cultivate present moment awareness and to connect with our underlying unity with everything else in the universe. Also, the recognition and expression of empathy and compassion towards others, recognizing that we share our essence really with everyone around us and that we're only different expressions of the same energy source. Community engagement is another example, including the participation in collective activities that foster connection between people of different types, different faiths, and different beliefs. Michael Beckwith also suggests that we regularly contemplate the web of existence that we live in, and we reflect on our own interconnectedness with everything around us, and that we embrace diversity, appreciating the richness of everyone's unique expressions. Remember, each of us is just a different expression of the same energy source. Rather than considering it to be something that is divisive or different, to think of life as something that adds richness by providing one more color or one more texture to life's tapestry. It's also important to acknowledge the gift of interconnected life and to express gratitude on a regular basis, and to learn from nature by observing the seamless interplay of all of the different ecosystems that exist around us. And finally, to expand our knowledge by consistently seeking new wisdoms beyond that which we conventionally are taught or that we may come to know already. Expanding our mind and expanding our knowledge base is about continually striving for more and breaking the boundary of what we believed was possible before. Reaching unity consciousness is a process that results in the dissolving of our material self into the cosmic symphony that's taking place around us and recognizing that we are at one with everything that is. So, one of the questions I had almost immediately upon learning about these 4 different frequencies or stages of consciousness is whether achieving a higher level of consciousness also succeeds in making someone a better person than they were before. And so, I rummaged around and I've read some books and I tried to research the answer to that. And what I've discovered is that it really depends on the person. So, for example, have you ever come across a channeler who seems to be channeling through a wisdom of some kind? And so it appears that they have, at the very least, reached the second highest stage of consciousness. But they're still really gossipy, they're mean sometimes, they have a nasty little nickname for people they don't like, they may be condescending or claim to be sharing messages that are divisive by nature. They might add to your fear or your sense of dislike towards other people or towards a group of other people who may be different to you or have different viewpoints from you. So, how do you explain that kind of channeler? Are they really channeling? I mean, maybe they are, but somehow they haven't become a better person, which kind of defeats the purpose of trying to reach a higher frequency or a higher stage of consciousness, don't you think? Well, it turns out that higher consciousness doesn't necessarily guarantee that a person will become inherently nicer, but it can significantly influence their behavior and their interactions with others. And there are a number of ways actually to know whether this is taking place for sure. So, for example, a person who has reached a higher level of consciousness may begin to experience expanded awareness of what's around them. So they may express greater empathy or have a greater capacity for empathy towards others, even others who may seem distasteful or difficult or tough to understand. They may also appear to have less of a desire to push forward with ego-driven desires and instead attempt to encourage, encourage compassion, encourage love, and interconnectedness for themselves, but also for other people around them. When you recognize the interconnectedness of all of life, it's natural that you will begin to experience a greater degree of compassion towards others. Understanding the motivations beneath other people's behavior becomes easier, and it's a sign of increased empathy. You don't have to agree with them, but it's okay to see what's there. You begin to recognize that life is a complex tapestry of struggles, joys, and emotions, and that nothing is really cut and dry or black and white. There are complex reasons why people are the way that they are. And once you recognize that on a consistent basis, you've reached an element of empathy that is conducive to a higher frequency of consciousness. A person with a higher level of consciousness may also be less reactive. They apply temperance to their emotional makeup, and they pause before they react compulsively to situations. Partly the reason for this is because they may be considering the impact of their emotions and their actions on other people. They may also have a greater tendency to forgive others. They may release their grudges and their judgments against other people, understanding that everyone is on their own unique journey and that it's not always necessary to understand what motivates them. With a higher level of consciousness comes a greater sense of abundance around us as well, and that might lead to acts of generosity and selflessness towards others. So, those are some examples of how you can recognize a higher level or stage of consciousness in either yourself or someone else. There are also challenges associated with achieving a higher level of consciousness. For example, the ego is one of the biggest challenges. Even with higher consciousness, there will be moments in life when ego driven behavior may reign. That's because we're human and humans are multifaceted beings. Higher consciousness doesn't erase our human complexities or our fears or our insecurities. Higher consciousness provides us with choices. We can choose love over fear and kindness over judgment. Practicing higher consciousness is a way of cultivating higher consciousness, and it requires ongoing practice, meditation, mindfulness, and self expression. It's not something that will happen overnight, but it is something that can become stronger and more profound in us and more sustained in us the more we practice and the more we try to achieve that higher level of consciousness. And so, yes, it is possible that a person can reach a higher level of consciousness and still be a pretty awful person, although it is likely that they will be experiencing a kind of struggle for power inside themselves because each passing day will mean that they are recognizing that their increased awareness of everything around them is also increasing their self awareness. Perhaps a person who doesn't seem to have improved as a person, but who claims to have a higher consciousness, is simply inside the process of transformation. And at some point, the struggle will resolve itself in some way. What's important for us to realize is that we can be aware of the positive aspects of another person's transformation of consciousness, and we can also be aware of the ego based legacy that hasn't yet been dissolved or which may never be fully dissolved. We can also protect ourselves and others by not shying away from reflecting on the risks that a highly conscious but not very nice person may pose on others, because there is a real risk there. Imagine the harm that a person can do to others if they're highly aware of the energies around them, but they haven't discarded that nasty, conniving, cruel, or selfish, greedy aspect of their third dimensional self. It's okay to see all of that in another person, but to put measure in place to protect yourself and others from any risk posed by that person. Being aware and protecting yourself and others is something that can be done without losing your own higher consciousness. There are different ways to deal with things that aren't quite right for you. Firstly, you can act without empathy and compassion towards people. You can hate them or fear them and things like that. Or you could try to change them. You could try to force them to be something other than what they are. Or you could simply acknowledge and observe, but ensure that your own protection bubble of existence doesn't allow you to feel fear or loathing. And you can also be there just in case one day that person reaches out to you. Because this third option of observation, compassion, and service are all signs of your own achievement of a higher stage of consciousness. And of course, we all evolve in our own unique ways and at our own unique pace. So everyone is going to have to go through their own experience of life. We really can't expect them to fit into the same box that we feel is right for us, can we? So I guess the only other thing I think I can say about higher consciousness is perhaps to share the methods that most people use to achieve that higher stage of consciousness. It's really quite simple and no prior experience or equipment is needed. All you need is two things, and those two things are intention and stillness, and that's it. Intention is the commitment that you make to yourself to connect with this elevated state of awareness. It means, creating a little bit of space in your life so that you can focus on your own conscious transformation. And then stillness involves the things you can do to achieve that state of inner calm. Things like meditation, quiet contemplation, or mindfulness. By stopping and spending time in quiet reflection, anything upward from 10 minutes a day even, you can learn to tune yourself into a higher frequency of consciousness. Just be still, listen to your own breathing. Notice the way that your body feels, the rise and fall of your chest as you inhale and exhale, the sounds and smells of your environment, things like that. Eventually, perhaps even the energy fields around you, the sound of your body, its vibrational hum. And the more you do it, the more you do these things, and the more consistently you commit yourself to return and do it even more, the more you will become aware of everything. Your increased awareness is your increased consciousness. It's as simple as that. And I'm going to tell you now, I've just saved you a few $100s of money you might have spent on an expert who might use a lot of fancy lingo, but is basically going to tell you the same thing. All you have to do is stop and repeatedly practice being aware, and you'll get it. You're welcome. So before we end today's episode, let's take a quick look at the topic of ascension too. I mean, why not? After all, you've already signed up for this episode. Why leave you with only half the story? So there are two kinds of ascension that humanity is capable of. One is physical ascension, and the other is intangible ascension. Physical ascension is the idea that a person's physical body undergoes a transformation that allows them to ascend to a higher state of being. To use an analogy, so imagine a mountain climber ascending up a hill until he or she gets to the peak. Physical ascension involves rising upward or climbing upward. Some spiritual traditions believe that through specific practices, individuals can elevate their physical bodies to a more refined, enlightened state. Legends of ancient yogis or spiritual masters, some of them involve stories of them having achieved physical immortality or having transformed their bodies into light. You may have heard of humanity's transformation gradually taking place now into the future, from the third dimension where we are now to the fifth dimension. And that fifth dimension is one in which we are described to have no body and to simply be beings of light. Those are examples of physical ascension. Physical ascension is considered to be miraculous in some faiths and may also be believed to have included divine intervention. The stories of Jesus, for example, involve him going to the top of the mountain and transforming from a physical being into a being of light. If physical ascension is a possibility, and I believe that it is likely a possibility, it's also most likely that this is a state of being that occurs at the point of death from the material world. There are many people in the world who've experienced near death experiences, for example, who recall having lifted from their bodies and being able to hover above their own physical bodies and look at themselves following death. But before they return back to their physical body, which of course is the only reason why they've come back to be able to tell us this story. So, in summary, physical ascension is the separation of the spirit from the physical body so that the physical body appears to be essentially elevating or levitating from the material plane. Now, on the other hand, intangible ascension focuses on the elevation of consciousness, energy, and spiritual awareness. It doesn't need to necessarily involve altering the physical body or dying or anything of that nature. Rather than changing the material form, intangible ascension involves expanding one's awareness, perception, and connection to higher states of consciousness. It transcends physical limitations and emphasizes the inner transformation of a person. Intangible ascension includes, for example, spiritual awakening, which is when a person experiences a profound shift in perception and realizes their interconnectedness with all of life. And also, of course, higher states of consciousness, which achieve a state of bliss, unity, or expanded awareness through meditation, mindfulness, or spiritual practices of some kind. And there are some people who believe that as we raise our vibration, we activate a light body, which is an energetic template beyond the physical form. Intangible ascension is available to everyone, regardless of their physical condition, who they are, where they live, their race, their gender, their age, or their external circumstances. It involves inner work, work on the inner self, self awareness, and alignment with universal truths. And so basically, physical ascension focuses on the transformation of the material body, while intangible ascension emphasizes inner growth, consciousness, and energetic expansion. Both physical and intangible ascension are paths towards spiritual enlightenment. They are most certainly part of a spiritual journey. And so let's see here. We've talked about the difference between ascension and higher consciousness. Higher consciousness, and in particular, the 4 stages of consciousness, which are described by Michael Beckwith of Agape Center. And they are the 4 progressive stages in which a person can raise their level of consciousness. Ascension also is divided into 2 parts, whether it be physical or intangible. And it's a little bit more like the end product of that achievement of the higher stages of consciousness. So the destination, whereas the raising of the consciousness are the methods that we use to get there. So one is the process and one is the destination. Kind of, because of course, anything outside of the 3rd dimensional material plane is not going to fit entirely perfectly with the 3rd dimensional material way of speaking. But I think we pretty much get the gist. And so, what will you be thinking next time you listen to a radio show or watch a TV show or perhaps an interview on YouTube or on your favorite podcast when an expert in spirituality and higher ascension says things that kind of exposes that they still have a bit of their humanity and 3rd dimensional ego existence left behind? Hopefully, you'll be listening with a higher state of awareness and you'll know that you are when you realize that they too are very human, and so they are also seeking greater wisdom, just like we all are. We're all still human, and therefore we all still have a long way to go. We are each on our own unique journey through life. And if you're listening to my voice today, you might also be on a journey of discovery in your life, of enlightenment and attainment of a higher frequency of consciousness that you can reach in this lifetime. And so be mindful, Seek inner calmness. Set aside times for reflection and greater awareness of your inner self and your outer world. Spend time with nature. Observe the water, the trees, the natural world around you. Observe others without fearing or judging them. Think about the unique life they've led, which has brought them to where they are today. Feel and display empathy towards others, but also self-protection and self-respect towards yourself. Be your own hero and celebrate that hero that you already are and that you have always been in your life. And be kind, because kindness, especially kindness during times when it may seem to be a bit of a challenge to be kind, well, that kindness is the surest sign of a higher consciousness. Live the example of the world that you wish to live in. We can't change other people, but we can change ourselves. And when our change becomes apparent to others, that is a sign that our energy is expanding around us. There will be others who are captured by our energy, and they will begin to seek a higher consciousness too. And then they will capture others who will also seek higher consciousness. And one by one, humanity will begin to ascend. It's time. And each of us is our own pioneer on this path towards our future. If you'd like to know more about what I do, then visit me at Ellie Dreams and Under on YouTube. You can also find me on Facebook, Threads, Instagram, Patreon, and Shopify. Just look for Ellie Dreams and Under or visit my YouTube channel for all of my social media links. And don't forget to check out Patreon for extra content on today's topic and a wide variety of ad-free videos. Thanks to everyone who's joining me today on KGRA's variety of platforms. Don't forget that if you'd like to become a member of the KGRA broadcasting community so that you can chat with like-minded folk during any of KGRA's video broadcasts, just use promo code Ellie, that's me, to get 30% off your subscription. So that's it for today. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.